Vanessa Okafor sat in the grand living room of her family's mansion, her hands curled into fists as she listened to her father, Mr. Williams Okafor, speak. His deep voice carried authority, echoing through the large space. "Vanessa, you are not getting any younger. It is time for you to settle down with a responsible man. I have spoken to Desmond's family and they agree that you two would make a good match. He is from a respected home, and together you will build a strong future." Vanessa's heart pounded in frustration. It was always the same speech. Marry a wealthy man, secure the family legacy, keep the Okafor name prestigious. Never about love, never about what she wanted. "Daddy, I don't need an arranged marriage," she said, her voice tense but controlled. "I already have someone I love. I'm in a serious relationship." Her mother, Mrs. Nena Okafor, who had been sitting quietly beside her father, slowly placed her teacup on the table. Although her expression was unreadable, Vanessa could feel the weight of her stare. Her father remained unmoved. "Really? Then bring him home. I want to meet this man who has stolen my daughter's heart. If he is serious, he should be ready to face me." Vanessa felt her stomach twist. She had expected pushback, but not this quickly. If she didn't bring Desmond soon, her father would think she was lying. "Fine," she said confidently, masking her sudden nervousness. "I'll bring him." Mr. Okafor nodded in approval. "Good. Bring him tomorrow night. Let's see if he is worthy of you." Vanessa quickly got up, her heartbeat racing as she pulled out her phone and dialed Desmond Okachukwu. He picked up after a few rings. "Babe, I need to see you right now. It's important." "Relax, Vanessa." "What's the rush?" He replied lazily. "It's my dad. He wants to meet you. I told him we're serious, and he expects to see you tomorrow night." There was a long pause, then a sigh. "Vanessa, tomorrow is tough. I'll be working late. You know how things are." Her stomach dropped. "Desmond, this is important. Can't you make time?" "Babe, I can't. Let's talk later, okay? I'll call you when I'm free." Vanessa clenched her teeth. She was tired of excuses. Desmond always seemed to have an important meeting, a last-minute trip or something that conveniently kept him from meeting her family. "Fine," she snapped before hanging up. Still fuming, she stormed out of her father's house and into her car. She was not in the mood to argue anymore. "If he won't come to me, then I'll go to him," she muttered. She drove straight to Desmond's house. If he was too busy to see her, then she would wait for him to get back from work. She needed to make sure he understood just how serious this was. She pulled up to Desmond's house, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. The street was quiet, and only the dim glow of the porch light illuminated the entrance. She checked the time, 9:45 p.m. If Desmond was working late, he wouldn't be home yet. "Good. I'll wait for him," she muttered, stepping out of her car. She walked up to the front door, debating whether to call him again, but something didn't sit right with her. The more she thought about it, the more annoyed she became. "I need to know if he's really working," she whispered to herself. She reached for the doorknob. It turned easily. Unlocked. Why was the door open if he wasn't home? She pushed it open and stepped inside. The house was quiet, the air still. But then, a faint laugh, a woman's voice. Her breath hitched. Her heels barely made a sound as she stepped deeper into the house. The living room was empty, but the soft glow of a bedside lamp shone from beneath the door to Desmond's bedroom. Vanessa's heart raced as she reached for the door handle. And then, she heard it. A giggle, a woman's voice teasing. "Desmond, stop it." A man's low chuckle. "Come here, baby." Everything went numb. Vanessa threw the door open, and the scene before her crushed her soul into a million pieces. Desmond, her Desmond, was lying in bed with another woman. His arm was wrapped around her, their bare bodies tangled in the sheets. The woman, someone Vanessa didn't recognize, gasped and grabbed the covers, pulling them up to her chest. Desmond sat up in shock, his face going pale. "Vanessa, what are you doing here?" Vanessa felt her entire world shatter. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't move. She couldn't even scream. Her fingers curled into fists. She had defended him. She had planned a future with him. She had lied to her father for him. And this was how he repaid her? So this is why you were working late? Her voice came out in a whisper, thick with disbelief. Desmond ran a hand over his face, scrambling for words. Vanessa, it's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like! Vanessa exploded, her voice shaking with rage. You're in bed with another woman, Desmond! How much clearer can it be? The woman beside him shrank back, clearly wanting to disappear. Desmond tried to get out of bed, but Vanessa took a step back, disgusted. Don't even try, she spat. She didn't want to hear his excuses. She didn't want to hear anything. Without another word, she turned and stormed out. She barely registered Desmond calling after her. She didn't care. She was done. She practically ran to her car, her hands trembling as she yanked the door open. She threw herself into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut. Her breathing was ragged, her chest heaving. Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Her father was expecting to meet her boyfriend tomorrow. Her boyfriend had just betrayed her in the worst way possible. She had no one. She gritted her teeth and turned on the ignition. I need to get out of here. She drove blindly through the city streets, her mind spinning. Her father's words replayed in her head. Bring him home. I want to meet him. But there was no one to bring. Vanessa wiped a hand over her face, letting out a shaky breath. She needed a plan. And then, as she passed a dimly lit street, she saw them. A small group of homeless men, sitting under an old bridge, laughing and talking as if they had no cares in the world. That was when the idea hit her. If she couldn't bring her real boyfriend home, she would hire one. Vanessa's hands tightened around the steering wheel as she pulled over near a dimly lit alleyway. Her mind was racing, but one thought kept repeating itself. She needed a solution, and she needed it fast. It was risky, it was crazy, but she had no other choice. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out of her car and walked toward them. As soon as they noticed her, their heads turned in curiosity. A young, well-dressed woman approaching them at night. It was unexpected. A few of the men immediately stood up, eager to grab her attention. Madam, please, anything will help, one of them begged, stretching out his hand. God bless you, fine lady, another added. Vanessa barely noticed them. Her eyes were locked on one man. He was sitting apart from the others, wearing a black hoodie, his face partly hidden under the shadow of the bridge. His beard was unkempt, his clothes were worn out, but there was something different about him. Unlike the others, he wasn't begging for anything. He just sat there, watching her with a calm but distant expression. Him, Vanessa said, pointing at him. The other men turned to look at him, then back at her in confusion. Me? He finally spoke, his voice rough but steady. Yes, you, Vanessa said, stepping closer. I need to talk to you. He let out a short, dry laugh and shook his head. Look, rich lady, if you're here to save a homeless man, try someone else. I'm not interested. Vanessa crossed her arms. I'm not here to save you. I'm here to make you an offer. His eyebrows lifted slightly, intrigued but skeptical. An offer? What kind of offer? Vanessa hesitated for a moment. Saying it out loud made it sound even crazier, but there was no turning back now. I need a fiancée. The silence that followed was so heavy it could crush a mountain. The other homeless men burst into laughter, slapping each other's backs. "Ha, madam, you unmarried street guy?" one of them cackled. "Sister, take me instead. I find Pa Sam," another joked. The hoodie man, however, simply stared at her, his eyes narrowing. "You're serious?" he said finally, his tone no longer amused. Vanessa nodded. "Yes. I need someone to pretend to be my fiancé for a short time. I'm willing to pay you." He leaned back against the wall, folding his arms. "My name is Vincent, by the way, and if I may ask, why exactly would a rich girl like you need to fake an engagement?" Vanessa clenched her jaw. "That's none of your business. All you need to know is that I'm willing to pay handsomely." Vincent smirked, shaking his head. "Lady, you must be really desperate." "Are you interested or not?" Vanessa snapped. Vincent exhaled, rubbing his beard. No offense, but I don't do charity cases. Vanessa tilted her head. Who said I was doing charity? I'm offering you money, a lot of it. Vincent gave her a long, hard look, then shrugged. Nah, I don't need your money. Vanessa's frustration boiled over. Fine, she said, pulling out her phone. She turned to one of the other men, pretending to be interested in him, but before she could speak, Vincent suddenly sighed. Wait, he muttered. Vanessa turned back to him, raising an eyebrow. Vincent exhaled again, then glanced at the other men, the ones who needed the money. Some were shivering in the cold, and others looked like they hadn't eaten in days. After a long pause, he finally said, If you really want me to do this, give the money to them. Vanessa blinked in surprise. What?
You heard me, Vincent said. Give it to them, not me. If you do that, then I'll go with you. The other homeless men stared at him in shock. Vincent, are you crazy? That's your money, one of them shouted. You want to waste this chance? Another asked. But Vincent just stood up, stretching his arms like this whole conversation was exhausting. I don't need a rich girl's money, but they do. Vanessa was still stunned. Who was this guy? She studied him for a moment, then, without another word, she pulled out a bundle from her bag and handed it to the other homeless men. Then she turned back to him. It's done. Now, let's go. Vincent stared at her for a second, then let out a small chuckle. Well, this should be interesting, he muttered, grabbing his tattered backpack. Let's see what a spoilt rich girl's problems looks like up close. And with that, he followed her into the night. Vanessa drove in silence, glancing at Vincent from the corner of her eye. He sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, looking completely unbothered, as if this was just another regular day in his life. His black hoodie was pulled over his head, but it did nothing to hide his rough beard, tired eyes, and the worn-out state of his clothes. He smelled of sweat, dust, and the city streets. He didn't fit into her world, and he knew it. But soon that would change. Vanessa exhaled, gripping the steering wheel. She was really doing this. Where are we going? Vincent finally asked, breaking the silence. A friend's place, Vanessa replied shortly. He arched an eyebrow. Not your house? Afraid your rich folks might call security on me? Vanessa shot him a glare. I need you cleaned up first. My parents might be strict, but they're not stupid. If you walk into my house looking like this, they'll know something is off immediately. Vincent smirked. Fair enough. 20 minutes later, Vanessa pulled up in front of a modern, well-furnished apartment complex. This is where your friend lives? Vincent asked, as he stepped out of the car, stretching. Yes, Vanessa said, leading the way. She's a professional makeup artist. She's the only one I trust to fix this situation. Vincent let out a low chuckle. Wow. I'm a situation now. Vanessa ignored him and rang the doorbell. Seconds later, the door swung open, revealing Juliet Anyanwu, her longtime friend and one of the best makeup artists in the city. Juliet's eyes widened in shock as she took in Vincent's appearance. Her expression quickly turned from confusion to disgust. Vanessa, what is this? Juliet asked, arms crossed. Vanessa sighed. Juliet, meet Vincent. Vincent, meet Juliet. Vincent gave a lazy, two-fingered salute. Hey. Juliet wrinkled her nose. Vanessa, tell me this is a joke. Who is this person? Why does he look like he just crawled out of a dumpster? Vincent burst into laughter. Wow, straight to the insults? No warm welcome? Juliet narrowed her eyes. I'm serious, Vanessa. What are you doing bringing a homeless man here? Vanessa crossed her arms. He's my fiancé. Silence. Then Juliet laughed so hard, she had to hold on to the doorframe for support. Vincent smirked. Glad someone finds this funny. Juliet wiped tears from her eyes. Vanessa, I know you're under pressure from your parents, but this is your big plan. A homeless guy? You've officially lost it. Vanessa's jaw clenched. I don't need your judgment, Juliet. I need your help. Juliet scoffed. Help? With what? Making him look less like someone who sleeps under a bridge? Yes, Vanessa said firmly. You're a makeup artist. You know style. You know image. I need you to make him look like someone my parents would approve of.
Juliet stared at her like she had grown two heads. "You're really serious about this, aren't you?" she muttered. Vanessa nodded. Juliet sighed dramatically and leaned against the door. "You know what? Fine. You're my best friend and you've always helped me when I needed you. So I'll do this. But I still think you're insane." Vincent clapped his hands together. "Great. Glad we're all on board." Juliet rolled her eyes. "Don't get comfortable, street boy. This is temporary. I don't want my neighbors thinking I've taken in a charity case." Vincent smirked. "No worries, rich girl. I wouldn't want anyone thinking I actually enjoy being here either." Vanessa groaned. This was going to be a long night. The next day, Vincent woke up on the couch at Juliet's house. He was ready. Juliet shoved him into the bathroom, tossing in a bag of grooming supplies. "If you don't come out looking like a different person, don't bother coming out at all," she had warned. When he finally emerged, freshly showered, shaved, and wearing clean clothes, Vanessa couldn't stop staring at him. For a few seconds, she just stood frozen, unable to look away. She had to admit it to herself. He was very handsome. Not at all like the homeless man she had picked off the street. His thick, messy beard was gone, replaced by a well-groomed stubble. His hair was no longer a tangled mess, but cut and styled. And underneath all of that dirt and roughness, he was strikingly good-looking. She quickly shook herself out of it, forcing herself to focus. Juliet, however, whistled. Well, well, who knew there was a decent face under all that filth? Vincent smirked. "Glad you approve." "Don't push it," Juliet snapped, but she couldn't hide her slight smile. The final step was his wardrobe. Juliet threw designer clothes at him, making him try on different suits, shirts, and shoes until he finally looked the part. When he stepped in front of the mirror, even Vincent had to pause. He looked different, like someone who belonged in Vanessa's world. Vanessa studied him carefully, arms crossed. "Not bad. Now you actually look like someone my father won't throw out immediately." Vincent turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Do I?" There was something in his tone that made Vanessa hesitate. She opened her mouth to reply, but Juliet clapped her hands together. "All right, lovebirds. He looks decent enough now. Can I get some sleep?" Vanessa sighed. "Yes, thank you, Juliet." Juliet gave her a tired look. "Don't thank me yet. This is only the beginning. I hope you know what you're doing." Vanessa glanced at Vincent, who was still staring at his reflection. "So do I," she thought. Vanessa's heart pounded as she pulled up to the Okafor mansion, her fingers tightening around the steering wheel. The house, a massive estate with marble pillars and a sprawling garden, loomed in front of them. Vincent, sitting beside her, let out a low whistle. "So this is your house," he muttered. Vanessa didn't reply. She was too busy mentally preparing for what was about to happen. This wasn't a simple introduction. This was a test. She turned to Vincent. "Listen, my father is sharp. He doesn't tolerate nonsense, and if he senses anything off, this whole thing will fall apart. So whatever you do, be convincing." "Relax, princess. I clean up well, remember?" Vanessa shot him a glare before stepping out of the car. As they walked up the grand entrance, the huge doors swung open to reveal Mr. Williams Okafor, standing tall in his crisp suit, his sharp eyes immediately landing on Vincent. For a few long seconds he stared at Vincent with a sharp gaze. "Have we met before?" Mr. Okafor asked, tilting his head slightly. Vanessa felt a wave of panic rise in her chest. Vincent, however, remained calm. He simply smiled and extended his hand. "I don't believe we have, sir. But I've heard a lot about you." Mr. Okafor shook his hand, but his look of recognition didn't disappear. His piercing gaze studied Vincent for a moment longer before he finally nodded. All right, let's eat." The family dinner was awkward from the start. Vincent sat beside Vanessa at the long dining table, his posture perfect, his charm effortless. He answered questions smoothly, never showing any cracks in the story Vanessa had crafted for him. But while Mr. Okafor seemed content enough,
Mrs. Nanena Okafor was a different case entirely. She never took her eyes off Vincent. She barely ate, barely spoke, just watched. Finally, she set down her fork and leaned forward. "So, Vincent, where exactly did you and Vanessa meet?" she asked, her voice sweet but sharp. Vincent smiled. "We met at a charity event. She was volunteering and I happened to be there as well. We just clicked." Vanessa internally sighed in relief. They had rehearsed that answer. Mrs. Okafor, however, didn't seem satisfied. "Interesting," she murmured. Then came the next voice. "Or is it something else?" Vanessa closed her eyes briefly before turning to face her cousin, Lauren, who sat across from them with a fake smile plastered on her face. Of course, Lauren would try to cause trouble. Lauren had always been jealous of Vanessa. The competition between them had existed since childhood. Who wore the best clothes, who had the best grades, who had the richest boyfriend. And now, Lauren was determined to prove that Vincent wasn't who he claimed to be. "I mean, let's be honest," Lauren continued, twirling her fork in her fingers. "A man like you, Vincent. I don't recall ever seeing you at any of the charity events Vanessa attends." Vincent simply smiled. "Perhaps you were too busy admiring yourself to notice me." Lauren's smirk vanished instantly. Mr. Okafor let out a chuckle. "I like him," he said, cutting a piece of steak. Lauren, humiliated, glared at Vincent, but he just kept eating, as if her opinions didn't matter. But while Lauren was throwing daggers at Vincent, Mrs. Okafor remained deep in thought. Vanessa could tell her mother wasn't done yet. That night, after dinner, Mrs. Okafor sat in her private study, her fingers tapping against the desk. "I know I've seen that man somewhere before," she muttered to herself. Lauren sat across from her, arms crossed. "I don't buy it, Auntie. That man isn't who he says he is. I can feel it." Mrs. Okafor nodded slowly. "I need you to find out everything you can about him," she said. Lauren's eyes lit up with excitement. "Leave it to me." The plan was simple. They would dig into Vincent's past. If he was lying, they would find out. And if they did, Vanessa wouldn't know what hit her. Meanwhile, Vanessa walked Vincent to the guest room where he would be staying for the night. "You handled yourself well," she admitted as they reached the door. "I told you I could play the part." Vanessa hesitated, then cleared her throat. "Good. Because my mother is already suspicious. And Lauren, she won't stop until she finds something." Vincent's smirk faded slightly. "So I guess that means I need to be extra careful." Vanessa nodded. There was a brief pause, too long, too noticeable. For the first time since this arrangement started, Vanessa felt something different, a warmth between them, a silent understanding. She quickly shook it off. "Good night, Vincent. Good night, Vanessa." She walked away quickly, not wanting to think too much about how her heart had started beating faster. Mrs. Nena Okafor sat in her study, fingers tapping rhythmically on the polished wooden desk. Across from her, Lauren scrolled through her phone, determined to dig up anything useful about Vincent Okoro. "I don't trust that man," Mrs. Okafor murmured. "Something about him feels off." Lauren smirked. "Of course it does. He's pretending to be Vanessa's fiancé, and we both know she didn't just find him at some charity event." Mrs. Okafor narrowed her eyes. "Then we need to prove it." Lauren sat up straighter, eyes gleaming. "I already started looking into his name. I made a few calls." Mrs. Okafor leaned forward. "And?" Lauren frowned. "There's barely anything about him in recent records. It's almost like he disappeared for a long time." Mrs. Okafor tapped her chin thoughtfully. "If we can't find out much about him, we'll go a different route. We'll find someone who might know him." She picked up her phone and made a call to a private investigator. "Find everything you can about a man named Vincent Okoro, his education, his family, his past. I need answers immediately." Later that evening, as the family gathered for tea in the Okafor Mansion's Grand Lounge, the private investigator's report came in. Lauren grinned triumphantly as she skimmed the document on her phone. "I knew it. Vincent is not who he claims to be."
Mrs. Okafor snatched the phone from her and read the details. His father was Daniel Okoro? She read aloud, frowning. At that moment, Mr. Williams Okafor, who had been quietly flipping through a newspaper, suddenly froze. He slowly lowered the paper, his sharp eyes locked onto his wife. "What did you just say?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Mrs. Okafor blinked in confusion. Vincent's full name is Vincent Okoro. His father's name was Daniel Okoro. Mr. Okafor's jaw clenched, and for the first time that evening he looked genuinely shaken. "You said Daniel Okoro?" he repeated. Vanessa, who had been sitting beside Vincent, noticed the sudden tension in her father's face. "Dad, what is it?" she asked. Mr. Okafor slowly turned his gaze to Vincent. "Your father's name was Daniel Okoro?" he asked. Vincent, who had been watching everything unfold, nodded cautiously. "Yes, he passed away years ago." Mr. Okafor let out a slow breath, rubbing his chin. His entire demeanor had shifted. "I knew that name sounded familiar," he muttered. He stood up, walking towards the large family portrait wall at the far end of the lounge. Among the framed pictures of business meetings and partnerships, there was one particular photo, a black and white picture of a younger Mr. Okafor in a security uniform standing next to a tall, serious-looking man. He pointed at the man in the picture. "That's your father," he said, turning to Vincent. Vincent stood up abruptly, his eyes widening in shock. "You knew my father?" Mr. Okafor nodded, his expression softening in a way no one had ever seen before. "I didn't just know him. He changed my life." Everyone in the room fell completely silent, watching as Mr. Okafor sat back down, staring at Vincent like he was seeing a ghost. "Daniel Okoro wasn't just a security man," Mr. Okafor finally said. "He was my boss. Back when I was a nobody, fresh out of school, struggling to find a real job, I was hired as a security man at a big company. It wasn't much, but I was grateful. Your father, Chief Okoro, but he saw something in me." Vincent's hands clenched at his sides. "What do you mean?" he asked quietly. Mr. Okafor leaned forward, his voice filled with emotion Vanessa had never heard from him before. "I was struggling. No one took me seriously. I was just a small boy running errands for powerful men. Your father, he took pity on me. He saw that I was a graduate with a good result, that I had potential. And do you know what he did?" Vincent shook his head. "He introduced me to his business partners," Mr. Okafor continued. "He said, 'This boy is wasting his time running errands. He should be in the boardroom, not opening and closing gates.' And just like that, my life changed." Mrs. Okafor and Lauren stared in disbelief. "Your father was the reason I got my first big break," Mr. Okafor said. "He told most of his friends I had talent, that I deserved an opportunity, and because of that, I got promoted. From there, I built my own business. My fortune, my success, and a lot of people who helped me then were because of my affiliation with your father, I can proudly tell you. It all started because your father believed in me." Vincent stood frozen, struggling to process the revelation. Vanessa, who had been quiet all this time, finally spoke. "So, you knew Vincent's father all along?" Mr. Okafor nodded. "Not just knew him, I respected him. He was a good man, honest, hard-working. I never met Vincent because back then he was studying abroad, but I remember seeing his father's sitting room. There was always a framed picture of his son Vincent on the shelf. I recognize the face now." Vincent swallowed hard. He had spent years feeling abandoned, believing his father had no real connections in the business world. Yet here he was listening to the truth. His father had been the reason for one of the wealthiest men in the country's success. "Your father would be proud of you," Mr. Okafor said quietly. Mrs. Okafor and Lauren sat completely speechless. Their attempt to expose Vincent as a fraud had done the exact opposite. It had proven that he was more connected to this family than they ever expected. Vanessa turned to her mother, her eyes sharp with defiance. "Still think he's lying?" she asked. Mrs. Okafor said nothing. Lauren looked away, humiliated. But Vincent wasn't sure how to feel. This revelation had changed everything. The room was still. No one spoke. Vincent took a deep breath. "You said you knew my father," Vincent said slowly. "But if that's true, why didn't you ever look for him?" Mr. Okafor sighed, rubbing his forehead as if the memory pained him. "I did," he admitted. "I went back to your father's house many times after I tried to reach him to no avail. I wanted to thank him, to help him in any way I could, but he was gone." Vincent's heart dropped. "Gone? Yes," Mr. Okafor continued. "I tried calling, but his phone was off. I assumed he had moved abroad. Many people do when they want a fresh start, but I had no idea. No one told me what really happened to him." Vincent let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "He didn't move abroad, Mr. Okafor. He didn't leave for a fresh start. He lost everything." Mrs. Okafor and Lauren exchanged a look, sensing the sudden heaviness in the room. Vanessa held her breath, waiting for Vincent to continue. He looked up, his eyes sharp and filled with an anger that had been buried for years. "My father was betrayed," he said, his voice low but firm. Mr. Okafor frowned. "What do you mean?" Vincent exhaled sharply. "It was his best friend," he said, his jaw tightening. "Mr. Patrick, his business partner. My father trusted him like a brother. They built everything together. But Patrick, he wanted it all. He used my father's trust against him, made him sign off important company shares, and before my father knew it, he had nothing left." Mr. Okafor's eyes darkened. Patrick Igwe?" he asked, almost as if he didn't want to believe it. Vincent nodded slowly. "Yes, that's the one." Mr. Okafor's hands curled into fists. He had done business with Patrick Igwe in the past. He had always sensed something off about him, but never questioned it too deeply. Now he wished he had. "I had no idea," Mr. Okafor said, shaking his head in regret. "Your father never reached out to me." Vincent smiled bitterly. "If you know my father well, you should know he isn't one to call in such favors," he said, his voice laced with pain. "Do you think a man who had just lost his entire life's work to someone he trusted could start calling old friends for favors? He was ashamed, Mr. Okafor. The man who once helped people rise had fallen. He didn't want pity." Mrs. Okafor and Lauren looked away, suddenly uncomfortable. Vanessa, however, was staring at Vincent, seeing a depth of pain she had never noticed before. "What happened to him?" Mr. Okafor asked softly. Vincent's throat tightened, but he forced himself to speak. "After Patrick took everything, my father's health started failing. It wasn't just the loss of money. It was the betrayal, the stress, the humiliation. We used our last savings to fly him abroad for treatment, hoping the change in environment would help." A long pause. Then, in a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper, Vincent said, "But it didn't. He never recovered. The pain of betrayal killed him more than the illness itself." Vanessa felt her chest tighten. Mr. Okafor looked completely shaken, his shoulders slumping as if a great weight had just been placed on them. I didn't know," he whispered. "If I had known, I would have helped. Your father did so much for me. I never forgot him." Vincent let out a slow, shaky breath. "But you didn't know, and by the time anyone cared to find out, it was too late." Silence. A thick, heavy silence. For the first time, Mrs. Okafor looked down as if she too felt guilty. Lauren's usual arrogance was gone. Vanessa gritted her teeth to stop the sudden sting of tears in her eyes. This wasn't just some fake engagement anymore. This wasn't just a plan to escape marriage pressure. This was so much bigger than her. She turned to Vincent, wanting to say something, anything, but he was already getting up from his seat. "If you'll excuse me," Vincent said calmly, but there was something cold in his voice. "I need some air." Without waiting for anyone's response, he walked out of the room. Vanessa watched him go, feeling a strange ache in her chest. She had brought him into this world as a lie, but now she was starting to see the real Vincent Okoro. And something told her she wasn't ready for what that meant. Vincent stood outside on the grand balcony of the Okafor estate,
letting the cool night air wash over him. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the evening settle in his chest. For years, he had believed his father had died forgotten, his name erased from history. But tonight he had learned the truth. His father had changed a man's life. And not just any man, Mr. Williams Okafor, one of the wealthiest and most influential people in the country. Vincent heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Mr. Okafor approaching, his hands in his pockets.
"Vincent," he said, his voice softer than before. Vincent straightened, nodding respectfully. "Sir." Mr. Okafor sighed, rubbing his forehead. "I still can't believe it. All these years I searched for your father. I wanted to at least thank him, but I thought he had left the country. If I had known he was struggling, I would have done everything in my power to help." Vincent offered a small smile, shaking his head. "I know that, sir, and I don't blame you. Life took us in different directions." Mr. Okafor turned to face him fully, his gaze filled with regret and sincerity.
"Let me make it right, Vincent. I owe everything to your father. Let me help you now. I can set you up in business, give you a fresh start." Vincent exhaled slowly, looking out over the garden before turning back to him. "I appreciate that, sir. More than you know," he said sincerely. "But I have to do this on my own." Mr. Okafor frowned. "Why? This isn't charity, Vincent. This is a debt I owe your father." Vincent smiled gently, his posture relaxed. "I know," he said, "and that means more to me than any amount of money. But my father raised me to be independent, to build something with my own hands. If I take your help now, I'll always wonder if I could have done it alone." Mr. Okafor studied him for a long moment, then sighed with a small smile. "You're just like your father," he said with a chuckle, "stubborn and full of pride." Vincent laughed lightly, nodding. "Maybe. But I also know that if I fail, I'll find my way back up." Mr. Okafor placed a hand on Vincent's shoulder. "You will succeed, Vincent, I have no doubt about that." Standing in the doorway, Vanessa had been listening to their conversation, her chest tightening. Vincent wasn't angry or bitter. He was simply determined. And for some reason that made her respect him even more. As Vincent turned to leave, she stepped forward quickly. "Vincent, wait." He stopped, turning to face her. "You don't have to go," she said, her voice softer now. Vincent smiled. "I do, Vanessa." She took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "You're walking away from a huge opportunity," she said carefully. Vincent nodded. "I know. But I have to build my own path. I don't want to live depending on your father's kindness. I want to make something of myself, the way he did." Vanessa hesitated. "Where will you go?" Vincent shrugged. "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." He took a step toward her and smiled. "Thank you, Vanessa, for everything." For a moment, Vanessa didn't know what to say. This was just supposed to be a fake engagement, a business arrangement. But now she was watching a man she had come to admire walk away, and for the first time she didn't want him to. "Take care of yourself, Vincent," she finally said. "You too, Vanessa," he replied, before turning and walking out of the Okafor estate. Vanessa watched him disappear into the night, her hands trembling slightly. And in that moment, she realized something she never expected. She wasn't just losing a fake fiancé. She was losing someone who had become real to her. Few days later, Vanessa sat in her room, staring out of the large glass window that overlooked the garden. The estate was quiet, yet her mind was far from peaceful. It had been days since Vincent walked away, and yet she couldn't stop thinking about him. She had spent so much time seeing him as just part of her plan, her way out of an arranged marriage. But now she saw him differently. She saw a man who had lost everything but still held on to his dignity. A man who could have easily taken her father's offer, but instead chose to stand on his own feet. A man who was strong, honest, and determined. And for the first time, she admitted it to herself. She had feelings for him, real ones.
Vanessa let out a frustrated sigh and leaned back against the chair. What is wrong with me? She whispered to herself. Why do I care this much? The answer was clear, but she wasn't ready to face it. Not yet. Meanwhile, Vincent had been busy building his future. After leaving the Okafor estate, he spent the next few days reaching out to old contacts, people he had submitted his business proposals to. And then, finally, luck came knocking. A group of investors, impressed by his knowledge and qualifications, offered him a business deal, a startup project that would put him back in the game. With their support, Vincent was able to restart his life. He wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't living in a mansion. But he had a fresh start. And for now, that was enough. On the other side of town, no matter how hard Vanessa tried to focus on her daily life, her thoughts always drifted back to Vincent. She told herself it was just curiosity, that she just wanted to know if he was doing okay. But deep down she knew the truth. She missed him. And she needed to see him again. So she did something she never thought she'd do. She went looking for him. She asked around, made a few calls, and even checked where she had first met him. Then finally, she found him. Vanessa stood outside a small but elegant boutique, her heart pounding. Through the glass window, she could see Vincent inside, browsing through a rack of freshly pressed shirts. He looked different. Still the same Vincent, but more refined, more confident. She watched as he spoke with the shop owner, smiling, relaxed, at peace. And suddenly, she knew exactly what she had to do. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door open and walked inside. Vincent turned at the sound of the doorbell, his eyebrows raising in surprise when he saw her. Vanessa? She walked up to him, her chest tight, her emotions threatening to spill over. I've been looking for you, she admitted. Vincent smirked slightly, folding his arms. Why? Did your father send you? No, she said, shaking her head. This has nothing to do with my father. This is about me. Vincent tilted his head, intrigued. Oh? Vanessa took a deep breath. I miss you, Vincent. His small smile faded, his expression turning serious. Vanessa. Let me finish, she interrupted, stepping closer. At first, this was just a deal, a way to escape my parents' expectations. But somewhere along the way, I started to see you for who you really are. Vincent's gaze softened, but he said nothing. You're not just a man who lost everything. You're a man who never stopped fighting, a man who refused to take the easy way out, and I admire that. I admire you. She swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper now. I don't care if you're rich or homeless. I don't care if you have nothing or everything. I just want you. Vincent blinked, clearly taken aback. For the first time, he didn't have a witty comeback. He simply stared at her, as if trying to figure out if this was real. And then, he smiled. A genuine, real smile. You're serious, aren't you? He asked. Vanessa nodded, her heart racing. Yes, I am. Vincent let out a small chuckle, rubbing the back of his neck. Well, this is unexpected, he admitted. Is it? Vanessa asked softly. He met her gaze, his eyes searching hers. Then, slowly, he reached for her hand. Maybe not, he murmured. And just like that, the world around them faded. There were no fake deals, no lies, no plans, just the truth. And for the first time, it was enough. A few days later, Vincent sat across from Mr. Williams Okafor in his home office, his posture relaxed, but his voice firm. I wanted to personally tell you about my new business deal, Vincent said with a proud smile. I've partnered with some investors who believe in my vision, and we're starting a company together. Mr. Okafor leaned back in his chair, his eyes filled with pride. That's incredible, Vincent, he said, nodding. I knew you'd make it on your own. You remind me so much of your father, determined, resilient, and never afraid of hard work.
Vincent chuckled. I like to think he'd be proud. Mr. Okafor smiled warmly. He would be, and so am I. For the first time, Vincent felt truly accepted. As Vincent left the office, he was surprised to see Mrs. Nena Okafor standing in the hallway, her usual stern expression replaced with something softer. For a moment she said nothing, just studying him carefully. Then finally she sighed and looked away, as if struggling to find the right words. Vincent, she said slowly, I owe you an apology. Vincent raised an eyebrow, folding his arms. Oh, she let out a small breath. I was wrong about you. I judged you without knowing your story, without realizing who you truly are. And now, knowing everything, knowing that the life of comfort I've enjoyed was made possible because of your father's kindness, I feel ashamed. She met his gaze, her eyes filled with something Vincent had never seen in them before. Sincerity. I'm sorry, Vincent, she said quietly. I misjudged you, and I hope in time you can forgive me. Vincent watched her carefully, trying to gauge whether her words were genuine. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw the truth. This wasn't the proud, dismissive woman who had once looked down on him. This was a woman who had finally realized the depth of her own mistakes. Vincent nodded slowly. Thank you, ma'am, he said simply. That means a lot. Mrs. Okafor let out a relieved breath, then gave him a small nod before walking away. And just like that, another chapter of his past was finally closed. That evening, Vincent found himself standing in the garden of the Okafor estate, watching Vanessa as she laughed with Juliet and a few friends. He smiled to himself. It was crazy to think how this all started. A fake engagement, a desperate plan to escape an arranged marriage. But now? Now, he couldn't imagine his life without her. Vincent took a deep breath and walked toward her. Vanessa, he called. She turned, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. Vincent, come join us. But then she paused, noticing the serious look on his face. What is it? She asked, stepping closer. Vincent reached into his pocket, and before Vanessa could process what was happening, he slowly dropped to one knee. Gasps echoed around them. Vanessa froze, her eyes widening. Vincent, she whispered, her heart racing. He took her hand in his eyes filled with nothing but love and certainty. Vanessa, he said softly. When we started this, everything was a lie. But somewhere along the way, I found something real. You. You saw me when no one else did. You stood by me even when you didn't have to. And you made me believe in love again. A tear slipped down Vanessa's cheek, but she said nothing. She was too overwhelmed. Vincent smiled. I don't care where I started. I don't care about my past. All I know is that I want my future to be with you. He pulled out a simple but elegant ring and held it up. Vanessa Okafor, will you marry me? For real this time? Vanessa let out a shaky breath, then broke into a wide, teary smile. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. Vincent grinned, slipping the ring onto her finger before pulling her into his arms. Cheers and applause erupted around them, but at that moment, nothing else mattered. All that mattered was them, their love, their new beginning. Months later, Vincent and Vanessa stood before their family and friends, exchanging vows in a beautiful and intimate wedding ceremony. Vincent was no longer just the homeless man Vanessa picked off the street. He was now a respected businessman who had earned his place in the world through hard work and resilience. Vanessa was no longer just a billionaire heiress forced into marriage. She was now a woman who had followed her heart and found true love. And as they shared their first kiss as husband and wife, they knew their story was only just beginning.